Hi, I hope this lighting is okay. If you can hear some crackling, it's because I'm eating my cereal. And today I'm here to talk about my November reading. I'm sure the light is going to change as I film this, and I'm sorry about it. But yeah. So I believe the first thing I finished in November was this. Well, actually not this. But it's in this, because this is a bind-up of the various novels and stories of Earthsea. There are 5 novels and then a collection of short stories, I want to say. And the one that I read was called Tales of Earthsea. And I did start talking about this in my October wrap-up. This is Tales of Earthsea. I don't know if you can see that. I'm going to have to change this lighting situation because it's giving me a headache. So. And this is by Ursula K. Le Guin, or Ursula Le Guin, or how she's credited as Ursula K. Le Guin on this. Did I say it's Tales of Earthsea? It's Tales from Earthsea, but I think I did say that right. Yeah, so I began talking about this in my October reading wrap-up because obviously they're short stories, so like I did get through quite a few of them I think in October, and it was only maybe the last 2 I would want to say that I read in November. But I did only start talking about The Finder, which is the first one in the story, and I think it is in the collection, and it is the longest one, and I thought it was really incredible. But yeah, I guess I won't talk that much about it more. And so in terms of your like reading time frame with this collection of short stories, like you could read it at any point I guess, but it will give you the most, I think, if you've read the first 4 books in the Earthsea series, because at points it takes events that happen in them and it's like a prologue kind of thing to them, and at other times it develops what has happened in the books further on. And the collection is chronological, I think, like it is plotted out. Obviously not all of them are about kind of things that alter or affect the way of the world, and they're more kind of subtle and simple than that, but I still think that they end up being like deeply meaningful. So the others in this collection are Dark Rose and Diamond, The Bones of the Earth, On the High Marsh, and Dragonfly. I think my least favourite, well, I don't know, because some of these do talk about violence, it's kind of hard to say that they're your favourite, but I do think that The Finder is just like a really phenomenally well done story. It's quite a long one, like I said, I think it is the longest in the collection, and the way that it like, yeah, kind of speaks to like liberating yourself, liberating others from violence, just this kind of like sense of earthy steadfastness, but also, I don't know, just like survival is really incredible. Dark Rose and Diamond is more of like a romancy type one, but it's very sweet. The Bones of the Earth I did really like. That one's quite short if I remember correctly, but also again like something that I felt really emotionally moved by. I also think like, yeah, again, this is where I would like stress that I think it's good to read some of the other books, at least a few of them, because there are characters that recur in this, and you know, one of the reasons why you respond emotionally is because you're like, oh my gosh, I love this character, or like, oh wow, okay, so now we understand this character much more because we've seen before, or we've seen how he responded to this thing, or you know, I don't know, anything. And I really like that. And like within the collection itself that also happens, so there's like somebody in The Finder and then who also shows up later in Dragonfly, and like when he showed up again I was like, oh, I love you. I would really recommend it, and you know, because it's written post like Tahanu, post Ursula K. Le Guin's kind of like re-evaluating of herself and of gender and feminism, I think in her life, but also like, you know, in her work. There's quite a lot kind of about that in a way. I mean, yeah, I wouldn't say it's all entirely kind of taking that on or anything, but yeah, I think it's done with much more awareness. Oh, maybe some of these were written before others. I don't actually know like when they were written or produced. I would imagine that they weren't all written at the same time, so I'm sure there's also developments within that. But I would definitely say Dragonfly and also probably like On the High Marsh, they both have big post Tahanu energy. So yeah, definitely something I would recommend, but only if you have some kind of experience and knowledge of the series. And yeah, I'm excited to keep reading. I mean, it's gonna be my last one. The Other Wind. Actually, I think there might be 1 or 2 more short stories in this collection just right at the end, because they're just kind of separate. One of them is called The Word of Unbinding, one of them is called The Rule of Names, and the other one is called The Daughter of Odrin. You know, I'm not sure about those short stories, but I definitely would like to read The Other Wind before the end of this year. So yeah, this massive book that is extremely hard to move around. The next thing I read was this book, from my largest book to my tiniest book, which I actually did forget to include in my book haul because I had lent it to somebody already. Oh, I didn't look up how to pronounce this person's name, I'm sorry. So this is Communism for Kids by Beanie Adamczak, translated by Jacob Blumenfeld, and Sophie Lewis. Yeah, it's a pretty tiny book and it has these like illustrations on it, and I guess it is like an interesting book in the sense that I'm not entirely sure like who it's really for. I've had my eye on it for a while. I think actually my friend recommended it to me like ages ago when I was like, what book should I read about communism? And like the beginning is kind of written like as if it's maybe potentially for children, and then the latter part is less so. I'd definitely be really interested to read this with like a kid and see what they think and talk to them about it, but perhaps not the epilogue. It's about 100 pages and it sort of starts off with these key questions. What is communism? What is capitalism? How did capitalism arise? What is work, what is the market, and what is crisis? And those are written as sort of like quite simplified responses to those things, which is great, and I definitely, you know, I think that's great. I also think like it's a fun book to read as an adult, like even aside from me not knowing quite who the right audience is, like I think it's just a good discussion of this stuff. And it's not like, you know, it's not big or scary, it's just a tiny little book with some cute illustrations. So yeah, I said it was split into 2 sections, it's actually split into 3. So then the third section is like what can we do, like what other models of being can we make together, basically. So it's like it starts with like what is to be done, and then it goes through these various trials. There are 6 of them, and they kind of describe like one problem that they encounter that like basically affects their experience, or like maybe moderates their experience of communism, or they, you know, they come to the conclusion that what they're doing isn't communism and it's still actually capitalism, or like, you know, all of that stuff. So that's also fun and interesting too, and it's like kind of nice to get some kind of like more specific rather than abstract idea of like what post-capitalist society might look like, alongside saying like these experiments are not all successful, but we can like learn from them, or we can, yeah, take away stuff from them. And then the last part is called Epilogue, Communist Desire, which is like 30 pages, and it is the most like, it brings sort of back all of the like theory, quite a lot of like jargon. Not that it's like bad, but it does significantly changes the register, I would say. You know, this book feels like it could be read with a child, and then this part is just like a lot. But I did really enjoy it, and maybe you need to like read the beginning of the book to feel confident in your capacity to understand the next part of the book. So yeah, there is that. Okay, now we get on to my like deeply embarrassing reading practices. I guess I can blame Sian from Storytime. So she was on Instagram the other day and talked about the Enola Holmes 2 film. I had already seen the Enola Holmes 1 film. I thought it was really bad, but also like I couldn't not see it because it's like kind of my thing. Like it's, like I said, really bad, but like it's literally like sort of made for me. It's about like politics in the 1880s, like hello. And after watching the first one, like I did know that they were based on books, or like it was based on a book, and so like kind of was vaguely intrigued, but not enough to actually go for it. And then yeah, like I said, Sian from Storytime like talked about the Enola Holmes 2 film, and I was like, alright, I'll bite. So I watched it, and I was interested in it. I think the way that they talked about class struggle and women workers was really interesting, and I also am intrigued by the fact that the Match Girl strike, Sarah Chapman specifically, who was one of the sort of key instigators, organisers of the strike, her name was kind of put back into history. And then it made me kind of intrigued as to like, because I was never taught that Sarah Chapman had anything to do with the Match Girl strike. I didn't know her name until I was reading radical history. And even like today I read things that are academic texts that say that Annie Besant, who's this middle class woman who wrote an article about like bad conditions in the factories, that it was like her who started the strike and who's like to thank for it, which is not only like doesn't really make sense at all, it's also just, you know, materially untrue. And she didn't even really support them striking. I mean, you know, she wasn't antagonistic to them, but she was like, I don't think you should strike. I mean, I know that your conditions are awful, but I don't think you should strike. It's a bit much. But yeah, she's absolutely been like, you say Match Girl strike, you think Annie Besant. So anyway, but that intrigued me as to know like how kind of public, like what public knowledge there is now around the strike. And I mean, there were more than just Sarah Chapman who was a key organiser in it. There were, I think, 5 key women that Brian and May, the factory, who, you know, are still around today, which is kind of wild. They surveilled some of the key women for a long time, so in their archives they have more information because of that surveillance. I haven't read all of the Louise Raw book, Striking a Match, which is about the match women's strike, but I read like the intro to it or something, and so it went over some of that stuff. So yeah, anyway, but that was really fascinating to me. So then I was like, okay, that intrigues me a lot. Like in 2006 or 7, like was this woman really writing about like the match girl strike in this way? So then I was like, okay, I'm gonna read the series, or at least I'm gonna start, because also my library has audiobooks. So the first one is called The Case of the Missing Marquess, which is kind of what Enola Holmes 1 is about. Oh, and the books are by Nancy Springer. Full disclosure, I gave both of these books 2 stars. I thought the second one had the potential to get to 3 stars, but then very quickly lost that potential. So I do think that things have changed a lot in the past like 20 years, especially in like children's publishing, and I think there's some, especially language, that you just wouldn't include in books these days, and it's just not very nice that there is that language in there, including some slurs against like Roma people, and yeah, the insinuation that they're all thieves, which is wild. One of the reasons I've been reading these is also because like I want something to like kind of relax to and like chill myself out to, because I'm quite stressed and not in a great place, but like I can't, you know, my other reading is all way too like either academic or just a bit too like structured or whatever, so just reading some really stupid mysteries is like, you know, fine for me. And there are quite a few things that are different from the films to the books. The first one follows Enola Holmes escaping her family home basically because her mother runs away on her birthday, and then her 2 brothers, Sherlock and Mycroft Holmes, come up to try to sort her out and try to send her to a boarding school, and so she runs away. And the film kind of, it suggests that Enola and her mother were way closer than they were, and it also suggests that, and that her mother kind of like trained her properly and taught her all sorts of subjects and fighting and all sorts of things to help her with being in the world. And so in the film, Enola escapes to go look for her mother, and like the missing Marquess of the title, he doesn't really show up. First of all, he's like 12 but I think they aged up both Enola and him in the film, and the Marquess doesn't, like, he's not a love interest, he's just some random boy who she kind of helps because she's thrown in together with him. I felt like, yeah, this was one of those series where there was like a sort of push and pull of like, this is like a fun idea for me, and then also like, oh my gosh, really, did you have to write it like this, or like really you want to say it like this? I was like intrigued enough because, so it is set in the 1880s and it is kind of engaging with some political radicalism that is going on at the moment, like at the moment. Can you tell that I think a lot about the 1880s, clearly? And that really interests me because I write about and I think about novels that are developing or representing political radicalism and like the kind of difficulties of that and the innovations to do with that, and yeah, it just interests me how like text and like literature can be vehicles and containers of politics. Anyway, so then I kept reading and I read the second one, which is called The Case of the Left-Handed Lady. And this one, like I said, I thought I was going to really like it actually at points, or like, you know, like it in comparison with the first one and with comparison with just like it being a kid's book. But then the way that it resolved itself and like the ending, I really just didn't like. But this one does kind of directly engage with the fact that, like, this is where it was getting a lot of points for me. It engages with the fact that people were reading Marx. It also engages with the fact that the first translations of Capital were in the 1880s, which means he was being read specifically in the 1880s in English. It also was vaguely engaging, sort of more adjacently, engaging with New Unionism, which is this wave of increasing union involvement and antagonism and like aggression in union tactics, which did lead to a lot of wins. But anyway, so she's kind of talking a bit about that, and yeah, just like I enjoyed that. And the other thing is that there's a character in this whose name is the same, I think, as a character's name in the second film, so I was also kind of like waiting for the film and the book to really like sync up, but they don't really ever do. It is quite a different story, and I think that what they did with the film shows you how much like class has become like a topic that we talk about, and like working class history, unions even. So really it's actually pretty interesting to like think about the differences. But anyway, so yeah, and then like basically the case is that Enola Holmes is trying to find this missing aristocratic woman. I guess this will spoil it, so you can just skip ahead for like a minute or something if you don't want to listen to that. But basically she like plays into this role of like that there's like a sort of outsider agitator who's like facilitating and like encouraging people to unionize, specifically dock workers in this scenario. And I think that's so stupid. It's like this middle class guy who fully like disguises himself, on top of the fact he's literally mesmerizing people, as in he's literally hypnotizing people, and yeah, he like goes away, hides out, puts on his stupid beard, and then like hypnotizes people into like joining a union and like stuff like that. I just thought it was ludicrous. And I also do think that like reiterating those like obviously shitty reactionary ideas is bad, and this whole idea of kind of like outsider involvement is something that people often say about like leftist struggle, specifically I guess like violent or like more, yeah, like aggressive class struggle. But you know, I just think it's ludicrous. And then it's also a way, she didn't do this, but like one of the things that obviously people do is they say like a foreign you know, a foreign outsider has come to like stir up trouble in the working class, which is obviously a way to also use one of the like deep strengths of any kind of like working class radical movement, which is that it's like an internationalist movement, because there is a solidarity and a same experience across countries and borders and whatever. So yeah, those are two books that nobody really needs to think about as much as I did, but there we go. I did also do some reading. Obviously like Communism for Kids does count as non-fiction November reading, so that's good. I did at least get some. And I did also make a bunch of progress in Lost in Work by Amelia Horgan. I'm 100 pages in and there's like 65 pages left. I did really want to finish it, but I'm so tired. I just completely ran out of steam and brain power, and like it's too much, you know? I'm so tired. I did also start Dykes to Watch Out For, The Essential Dykes to Watch Out For by Alison Bechdel finally. I would have really liked to finish this month, but I had to request it from the library because somebody had it out. They took like 2 weeks to get it back. So, I mean, that's fair. I do understand why you'd want to take 2 weeks to get this back, but it was also kind of annoying to wait. But I'm like 60 pages in and I'm really enjoying this. Hopefully I'll talk about it when I finish it in December. 2 books I mentioned in my non-fiction November thing were Call the Midwife, which I kind of tried to start, but I just ended up watching, or like rewatching the first like season and a half of Call the Midwife instead. So maybe I'll just finish watching that and then I'll read the book. And I didn't get to Anarchism in Northeast England, or like the section of it that I was going to read, but hopefully I've got a bit of downtime now for a little bit of time, maybe like 7 or so days. So in that time I think I'm going to try and do some kind of like more chill but still vaguely on topic reading. According to Storygraph I am reading 11 things right now. Oh yeah, I did start Harrow the Ninth this month. I think I maybe did start it in October, but I didn't quite like get into the zone with it. I still haven't quite, but I am making my way through, which is the second in the Locked Tomb series. And it did take a while to kind of like feel like I was like in the story more. But I think I finally got to a point where I do feel like I am. So that is good. I would really like to finish The Idiot before the end of this year, but we'll see. Anyway, so I am reading quite a lot of things and I would love to, you know, finish them off and not replace them, you know, so I'm reading less because obviously I'm quite overwhelmed. But yeah, we'll see. Let me know if you've read any of these books. Let me know your thoughts on Earthsea in general. Do you have a favourite book of that series? Obviously mine is Tahani. Any thoughts on Communism for Kids? Yeah, and also let me know your thoughts on the Enola Holmes like films and series, like if you have any thoughts, definitely let me know. Okay, I will talk to you when I next talk to you, and I hope you're having a nice day whenever you're watching this. Bye!